What happens when extraordinary talent collides with personal demons? Billy Preston, the man famously dubbed the fifth Beatle, was a dazzling musical genius who captivated audiences with his vibrant performances and unforgettable collaborations. Yet, beneath the spotlight lies a life marred by addiction, heartbreak, and the struggle for identity as a gay man in a challenging era. It is worth mentioning that few people know about these dark aspects of Billy. Therefore, don't miss this video. Billy Preston had a unique and influential presence in the world of music, yet he stood apart from many of his contemporaries through his deep spiritual roots. Brought up in the African-American gospel tradition, Preston was immersed in a rich culture of worship from a young age. The gospel music scene, especially within African-American communities, was not just a musical genre, it was a way of life, deeply intertwined with faith, spirituality, and community. It was within this powerful tradition that Preston's musical talents were nurtured and developed, setting the foundation for the extraordinary career that followed. Preston was a committed Christian throughout his life, and his religious faith was a cornerstone of both his personal and professional identity. He was never shy about expressing this aspect of himself, and his faith became a central theme in some of his most famous works. One of the most prominent examples of this is his 1970s hit, "That's the Way God Planned It." The song, with its uplifting lyrics and passionate delivery, speaks directly to Preston's belief in a higher purpose and divine order. Through this track, Preston communicated his deep trust in God and the conviction that, regardless of life's struggles and uncertainties, there is a divine plan at work. It was a song that resonated with many listeners, not just because of its soulful melody, but because of the sincerity and depth of Preston's faith that shone through every word. However, Preston's Christian beliefs were sometimes in conflict with the secular world of rock and roll, in which he often found himself working. The rock and roll scene, particularly in the 1960s and 1970s, was often associated with a lifestyle that included themes of rebellion, hedonism, and even atheism, attitudes that stood in sharp contrast to Preston's religious upbringing. Despite these contradictions, Preston found a way to navigate these opposing worlds. His deep love for music and his natural talent allowed him to work alongside some of the most iconic and influential secular artists of the time, including the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. One of the most striking examples of this tension between his faith and his professional life came when Preston contributed to John Lennon's song, "God." The song, which was released on Lennon's solo album Plastic Ono Band in 1970, is a bold declaration of atheism. Lennon famously proclaims in the song, "God is a concept by which we measure our pain," and proceeds to reject belief in everything from religion to personal heroes. For a devout Christian like Preston, collaborating on such a track might have seemed a profound challenge. Yet Preston, ever the consummate musician, was able to put his personal beliefs aside and focus on the artistry of the project. His ability to do so speaks to the complexity of his character, someone deeply devoted to his faith but also respectful of the creative vision of the artists he worked with. Preston's personal life was also shaped by his close relationship with his mother, whom he loved dearly. This bond is beautifully reflected in his best-known composition, "You Are So Beautiful." Although the song is often interpreted as a love ballad, its origins were far more personal. Preston wrote the song for his mother, expressing through music the depth of his admiration and gratitude for the woman who had shaped his life. "You Are So Beautiful" became a massive hit when it was later recorded by Joe Cocker. But for Preston, it was always a deeply personal piece of music, a testament to the love and respect he held for his mother. Although Preston was celebrated for his immense talent and contributions to music, the details of his private life, particularly his sexual orientation and the trauma he endured as a child, remained largely hidden from the public eye until after his death. These hidden aspects of Preston's life provide insight into the complexities of his character and the challenges he faced while trying to reconcile his identity with his faith and public persona. Preston struggled throughout his life to cope with his homosexuality, which conflicted with his deeply held Christian beliefs. Raised in the African American gospel tradition and closely connected to the church throughout his life, Preston's religious upbringing ingrained in him the belief that homosexuality was morally wrong. This internal conflict created a profound sense of isolation and guilt for Preston, as he found himself torn between his natural inclinations and his faith. He feared that openly acknowledging his sexual orientation would alienate him from the religious community he had been part of since childhood, and he wrestled with feelings of shame and rejection. Adding to this inner turmoil was the lasting impact of the traumatic sexual abuse Preston suffered as a boy. Although details of this abuse were not publicly known for many years, it haunted Preston throughout his life. The abuse not only inflicted deep emotional wounds, but also contributed to the confusion and pain surrounding his sexual identity. Victims of childhood sexual abuse often struggle with feelings of powerlessness, guilt, and self-blame, and for Preston, these feelings were compounded by the societal stigma surrounding both homosexuality and abuse. This led to a lifelong struggle with his sense of self-worth and identity. Although Preston's sexual orientation became known to close friends and associates within the music industry, including rock icon Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, he did not publicly come out as gay until shortly before his death. The decision to keep his sexuality private for most of his life was influenced by both his religious convictions and his fear of how the public and the church would respond. For a man so closely associated with gospel music and Christian values, the fear of being ostracized for his sexuality was very real. Keith Richards, in his 2010 autobiography Life, spoke about Preston's struggles with his homosexuality, shedding light on the private pain that Preston endured. Richards' reflections reveal that while Preston may have been open about his sexuality with a select few within the industry, he remained deeply conflicted and anguished over the perceived incompatibility of his identity and his faith. Preston's decision to keep this aspect of his life hidden from the public eye, even as he worked alongside some of the most liberated and open-minded artists in rock and roll, speaks to the immense pressure he felt to conform to societal and religious expectations. In a 2010 interview for a BBC Radio 4 documentary, Joyce Moore, Preston's longtime manager and close confidant, shared a harrowing story from Preston's childhood that he had confided in her. This period, one of immense emotional distress, left deep psychological scars that affected him throughout his life, influencing not only his personal relationships, but also his professional trajectory. At around the age of 9, young Billy Preston found himself performing in a touring production, a significant opportunity for a boy so gifted at such a young age. It was an exciting time in his early career, but this period, which should have been full of joy and discovery, quickly became a time of profound emotional suffering. The specifics of the trauma were not widely known, but Preston conveyed to Moore that this chapter of his life involved overwhelming distress, isolation, and fear. One of the most painful aspects of this experience was Preston's attempt to reach out for help from his mother. According to Preston, when he sought comfort and protection, his mother, whom he deeply loved, was unable to understand or fully grasp the severity of the situation he was facing. For a child in distress, particularly one as close to his mother as Preston, this lack of emotional support from the one person he trusted most was devastating. Her inability to provide the comfort and protection he needed at that critical moment left him feeling abandoned and misunderstood. For Preston, this wasn't just a momentary lapse of support, but an entire summer of suffering, months in which he felt emotionally isolated, despite being surrounded by the adults who should have been caring for him. The fact that his mother, who had always been a central figure in his life, failed to recognize or address his distress, compounded his feelings of helplessness and confusion. This rejection at a crucial developmental stage planted the seeds of internal conflict that would later manifest in various forms throughout his adulthood. The emotional fallout from this period would resonate throughout Preston's life, as he found himself continually wrestling with feelings of abandonment, shame, and unresolved pain. These early experiences influenced many of his later struggles with identity, relationships, and self-worth. For Preston, a deeply spiritual man raised in the African-American gospel tradition, the emotional scars of his childhood presented a significant obstacle in reconciling his public persona with his internal reality. In addition, in the early 1970s, during a time of both professional success and personal conflict, Preston experienced another deeply traumatic event, one that altered the course of his relationships and personal life significantly. This incident, involving his close friendship with musician Sly Stone and his then-fiancée, actress and model Kathy Silva, left a lasting emotional scar on Preston and marked a pivotal turning point in his life. At the time, Preston was engaged to Kathy Silva, and their relationship appeared to be progressing toward a happy future. Preston, deeply religious and raised in a conservative environment, likely saw this relationship as not just a personal connection, but a key part of his identity, helping to reconcile the expectations placed on him by his faith, community, and career. However, beneath this relationship lay growing internal conflicts regarding his sexuality, which Preston had long struggled to reconcile with his Christian beliefs. Silva was a bright, charismatic figure in his life, and Preston must have believed that their relationship would offer some resolution to his inner turmoil. During this period, Preston had also become close friends with Sly Stone, the enigmatic frontman of Sly and the Family Stone. Preston admired Stone's creativity and vision, and the two musicians collaborated on several of Stone's projects, including the influential 1971 album There's a Riot Going On. This friendship was significant for Preston, as Stone was a groundbreaking figure in music, pushing the boundaries of funk, soul, and rock. Preston, who had always been a musical chameleon, fit seamlessly into Stone's world, contributing to his recordings and immersing himself in the musician's often chaotic and hedonistic lifestyle. However, the trust and connection Preston felt with both Silva and Stone would soon be shattered. According to Joyce Moore, Preston's longtime manager and confidant, he was devastated when he returned home one day to find Sly Stone in bed with Kathy Silva. This discovery was a profound emotional blow for Preston. Silva, the woman he had planned to marry, had not only betrayed him, but had done so with his close friend, someone he had worked closely with and admired. The emotional fallout from this betrayal was immediate and overwhelming for Preston, as it challenged his sense of trust and security in both his personal and professional relationships. Silva's relationship with Stone, which later culminated in a highly publicized wedding at Madison Square Garden, had a profound effect on Preston's emotional state. According to Moore, this event significantly influenced Preston's decision to step away from pursuing romantic relationships with women. The experience intensified his existing feelings of confusion and frustration about his identity, and it marked a turning point for him. Preston, who had long faced the pressures of living up to societal and religious expectations, found it increasingly difficult to reconcile his personal struggles with those demands. Following the incident, Preston's life took a sharp turn. Moore revealed that it was after this painful experience that Preston began using cocaine heavily, a drug that would eventually play a major role in his later struggles with addiction. His use of cocaine became a coping mechanism, a way for him to numb the intense emotional pain and to escape from the internal battle he faced over his sexuality. The betrayal by Silva and Stone didn't just fracture his emotional world, it pushed Preston deeper into self-destructive behaviors as he sought to manage the overwhelming feelings of betrayal, abandonment, and confusion. At the same time, Preston began engaging in relationships with men, marking a significant shift in his personal life. Moore has said that she believed his drug use and his turn to same-sex relationships were connected, both being ways for Preston to cope with the internal conflict between his religious upbringing and his sexual identity. Throughout his life, Preston had been caught between the expectations of his faith, which condemned homosexuality, and his own sexual desires. The Silverstone affair seemed to push him to stop hiding, but it did so in a context of pain and emotional devastation rather than liberation. You might not know this, but in 1991, Billy Preston was struggling with substance use issues, and he made the difficult decision to enter a drug rehabilitation program. This choice came at a time when his life was increasingly characterized by turmoil, both personally and professionally. While Preston had enjoyed a successful career, his battles with addiction were becoming harder to conceal and were starting to overshadow his musical accomplishments. While in rehabilitation, Preston was still on probation for a previous driving-related offense. This probationary status placed him under greater scrutiny and added a layer of vulnerability to his situation. In August of the same year, he faced significant legal troubles after an alarming incident involving a young man he had met at a gathering point, a location commonly frequented by individuals seeking day labor in Los Angeles. This young man later reported that Preston took him to his Malibu home, where the atmosphere quickly turned uncomfortable. During this encounter, substances were reportedly involved, and the young man found himself in a precarious situation. He recounted that once at Preston's home, he was exposed to behaviors that made him feel uneasy and threatened. It was during this unsettling experience that he managed to leave the premises, escaping what could have escalated into a much more dangerous situation. The details of this incident not only reflected the depths of Preston's struggles with addiction, but also raised questions about his judgment and behavior while under the influence. The gravity of this incident did not exist in isolation. Shortly before the arrest related to the young man, Preston was also charged in an unrelated matter involving another individual. This charge stemmed from an encounter with a man he had hired for work at his home, and it further highlighted the chaotic state of his life during this period. These incidents collectively painted a picture of a man grappling with the effects of addiction, often making impulsive and reckless decisions that had serious consequences. Following his arrest, Preston was required to undergo a drug test, the results of which confirmed that he tested positive for cocaine. This finding further underscored the severity of his addiction and the challenges he faced in attempting to reclaim his life. It became clear that his substance use had led him down a path that endangered not only his well-being, but also the safety and comfort of those around him. In light of these circumstances, Preston entered no-contest pleas to charges related to his substance use and the assault allegations. While this admission of guilt was a significant step, it was met with mixed outcomes in the legal realm. Notably, other more serious charges, which could have had grave implications for his future, were ultimately dismissed. This turn of events was a small relief amidst the turmoil, yet it did not erase the weight of the circumstances he faced. As a result of his legal troubles, Preston was sentenced to 9 months in a drug rehabilitation facility. This time in rehab was crucial, offering him a structured environment to confront his addiction and begin the process of healing. Additionally, he received a sentence of 3 months of house arrest, which served as both a punishment and a means to restrict his movements while he focused on recovery. In 1992, Preston's ongoing battle with substance abuse led to further legal complications when he was sentenced to 30 days in jail for violating his probation related to a previous drunk driving conviction. This short stint in jail served as a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions, yet it was only the beginning of a much more difficult period in his life. Preston's challenges with addiction were increasingly evident, and he struggled to find stability as he dealt with the repercussions of his past choices. By 1997, Preston's situation had deteriorated further. He was sentenced to 3 years in a California prison for cocaine possession, which was a violation of his probation terms. Earlier that year, he had tested positive for cocaine, leading to a 3-year probation sentence that mandated he remain drug-free and spend 90 days in jail. His failure to adhere to these terms illustrated the grip that addiction had on him, which had become a cycle of temporary recovery followed by relapse and legal consequences. While in prison, Preston's life took yet another unexpected turn. In 1998, he was indicted for his involvement in a $1 million insurance fraud scheme, a shocking revelation that added a layer of complexity to his already troubled life. The scheme reportedly involved setting fire to his own home in Los Angeles, an act that not only endangered his life, but also led to significant legal ramifications. The motivations behind such a drastic action might have been tied to financial desperation or a misguided attempt to escape the mounting pressures of his situation. Facing serious charges, Preston pleaded guilty to his involvement in the fraud scheme and agreed to testify against other defendants linked to the case. This decision reflected a critical moment in his life, one where he had to confront the consequences of his actions and the potential impact of his choices on others. As part of his plea agreement, Preston faced a sentence of 5 years of probation, 1 year in jail, and was ordered to pay $60,000 in restitution. The terms of this sentence meant that the jail time would run concurrently with his earlier cocaine possession conviction, which was an attempt by the legal system to streamline his penalties for the various infractions. During his time at California's Avenel State Prison, Preston attempted to find solace and purpose amid the chaos of his life. He led a chorus and performed at church services, activities that allowed him to connect with his faith and use his musical talents in a positive way. These performances provided him with a sense of community and an opportunity for self-expression, serving as a lifeline during a challenging period. Ultimately, Preston served 18 months of his 4-year sentence. His time in prison was a period of reflection and transformation. Many individuals facing similar challenges often find a degree of clarity and purpose during incarceration, and for Preston, this experience appeared to catalyze a shift in his life. Upon his release, he reportedly became drug-free, a significant milestone in his ongoing battle with addiction. In the latter part of his life, Billy Preston faced numerous health challenges, many of which stemmed from long-standing issues with hypertension. His health began to decline significantly, culminating in a serious battle with kidney disease. In 2002, Preston underwent a kidney transplant, a critical procedure that offered him a glimmer of hope and a chance for recovery. However, despite this major medical intervention, his health continued to deteriorate in the years that followed. Preston's struggle with health issues was compounded by his history of substance abuse, which likely had lasting effects on his body. As he tried to navigate these challenges, he voluntarily entered a drug rehabilitation clinic in Malibu, California, seeking to regain control over his life once more. Unfortunately, the rehabilitation center did not provide the sanctuary he hoped for. During his time there, he developed pericarditis, an inflammation of the pericardium, the protective sac surrounding the heart. This condition led to serious complications, including respiratory failure, which ultimately left him in a coma beginning on November 21, 2005. The coma marked a tragic turn in Preston's life, as his loved ones and fans alike held vigil, hoping for his recovery. The once vibrant musician, known for his exuberant performances and infectious spirit, was now fighting for his life. The circumstances surrounding his health were a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the toll that years of personal struggles had taken on him. After enduring this prolonged battle, Billy Preston passed away on June 6, 2006 in Scottsdale, Arizona. His death sent shockwaves through the music community and among fans worldwide who had long admired his contributions to the music industry. He had not only played with some of the biggest names in rock and roll, such as the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, but he had also created a legacy that blended gospel, soul, and rock in ways that resonated with diverse audiences. Preston's funeral, held on June 21, 2006, was a poignant tribute to his life and legacy. The service lasted almost 3 hours, filled with music and remembrances that highlighted the profound impact he had on those who knew him and on the music world at large. Joe Cocker, a fellow musician and friend, performed at the service, bringing his powerful voice to honor Preston's memory. Little Richard, another legend of the music industry, spoke at the funeral, reflecting on their friendship and the shared journey of musicians navigating the highs and lows of fame. The celebration of Preston's life also featured a brass band that played a stirring rendition of "Amazing Grace," a hymn that spoke to his deep-rooted faith and connection to gospel music. Additional musical tributes came from renowned artists, including Ali Woodson, the lead vocalist of The Temptations, and singer Mary Clayton, known for her powerful vocals and contributions to numerous iconic recordings. A gospel choir added to the atmosphere, filling the space with uplifting hymns and soulful melodies, evoking the spirit of Preston's musical roots. Throughout the funeral, mourners listened to heartfelt letters written by prominent figures in the music industry, including Paul McCartney, Eric Clapton, and members of the Rolling Stones. These letters served as a testament to the relationships he had cultivated throughout his career, illustrating the respect and admiration he garnered from his peers. Many shared stories of how Preston had touched their lives, both personally and professionally, highlighting his warmth, talent, and indomitable spirit. Billy Preston was laid to rest at Inglewood Park Cemetery in Inglewood, California. His burial marked the end of an era, but the music he created and the impact he made on those around him would resonate for years to come. What do you think about Billy Preston's turbulent life? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.